Hi, welcome everybody. My name is Byla Lindner. Thank you for joining us today, as Eli said, for part one of a two-part training on landlord engagement. I'm going to be one of your presenters today. Eli Hamilton is also going to be presenting today, and you're also going to hear from our colleague Lily Harvey. We all work for an organization called Homebase. Homebase is a nonprofit that is here to provide assistance and technical assistance and training to the San Mateo County continuum of care, including working with folks such as yourselves. Before I get started, I just want to see if, I see we have Brian Eggers here from HSA. If Brian wants to say anything before I get going on our objectives.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Hi, Lily. Hi, Byla. Hi, Eli. Good to see you. Eli, loved the intro about kind of the Zoom reminders. I'm usually the one who has background noise or is having another conversation, and I leave my mute button unmuted. So those were always helpful to hear. So hello, everyone. I'm Brian Eggers. I work with San Mateo County's Human Services Agency. Our agency works with all of your agencies in a variety of ways, sometimes through contracts or coordinating some of our homeless system programs. Just wanted to say thank you all for being here. Your work is much needed, difficult work, and we're very thankful from the county for everything you do day in and day out, considering everything going on. So thank you to you for being here and for your agency supporting you to be here for this training. As Byla mentioned, we partner with Homebase for trainings for our homeless system provider agencies. They also provide some technical assistance for some of your programs, and we're excited to partner with Homebase again this year to offer a variety of trainings, and this is kind of our first training this year, 2 parts on landlord engagement. So thank you all for being here. We're really excited. We really appreciate our relationship with Homebase, and I'm really excited to see the attendance. And yeah, thank you so much. You can always reach out to myself or the Human Service Agency with any questions, and we'll be also sending a link to all of your email addresses and supervisors again for the recording of this training and any potential handouts that they have as well. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll pass it back off to Homebase for the training.
Great, thank you. So really quickly, I just wanted to go over sort of our 3 main objectives for today's training. The first one is we hope that you gain some tools to help you sell, quote unquote, your amazing program and your clients to the landlords who you're going to be trying to recruit. We also want to help you to get some tips on communicating with landlords about initial logistical issues that can arise sort of early on in that landlord case manager client relationship. And we also want to give you an opportunity to learn from one another about promising practices for engaging with landlords. So we're going to have some interactive, we're going to have some fun stuff to try to bring out your sort of your own knowledge, to have an opportunity for you to share your own knowledge as well. Next slide, please. So really quickly, the agenda. So for today's training, we're going to have 2 main sections. The first one is going to be landlord recruitment and selling to landlords. So basically how to use sales techniques to promote your program and your client. Also some tips for closing the deal, so to speak, when you're working with landlords early on. And then we're going to have some role plays demonstrating these techniques with Homebase playing the landlord and some folks from Life Moves playing the case manager. And then we're going to have a discussion where we talk about what happened during those role plays. And then part 2, we're going to be navigating and talking about navigating initial logistics. So coming up with and talking about strategies for engaging with landlords on topics that may arise early on when you're engaging landlords, such as housing quality inspections, how to talk about those, talking about negotiating lease terms, and also what comes up for people with VAWA lease addendums sometimes, landlords being reluctant to sign those, and how to troubleshoot that situation. So we're going to then have another set of role plays, and I believe Jeremiah Williams from Abode is going to be joining us for one of those. And we're also going to have a discussion about those role plays as well. And right now I have a very exciting opportunity for anyone who's feeling really, really brave today and wants to volunteer for one of the role plays. This is going to be a role play about talking to a landlord about housing quality inspection that's occurred. So if anyone wants to volunteer for this awesome opportunity, if you could let us know, the first person who responds in the chat box wins. We'll email you the instructions about that, and then that'll be one of the role plays we'll do later on. So, and if you don't do it, then poor Eli has to pretend to be the case manager, and we don't want that to happen. So first come, first serve. Yeah, don't everyone rush, okay? You know, let's be civil here. But anyway, I'm just gonna leave it at that and pass it over to Eli to start with the first part of our training.
Thank you, Byla. And it's also, you know, anybody who volunteers for that final fourth role play, it's also an act of self-preservation, so you don't have to watch me try to do your intensely terrifying job. So, landlord engagement. As Byla said, the first piece of this landlord engagement series that we're going to focus on is coming at landlord engagement from the perspective of sales. If you were able to attend our most recent landlord engagement training in San Mateo County, which I think may have been maybe a year and a half ago, a little over a year, I think, you maybe may recognize some of the slides and some of the sales strategies. So for folks who weren't able to go to that training or have started working at your agency in the last year and a half, I hope that this is a bit of a fresh perspective and a new way of thinking about your landlord engagement. And for folks who have had the sales presentation before, I hope that it is a helpful refresher of some of these strategies that come from the world of salespeople. So we know that you understand your professional skills, but it's also really, I think, a good idea to have someone else remind you how incredibly good you are at your jobs. So to begin with, you all bring, just by virtue of the work you do, regardless of your past training and your background, probably most of the essential skills and the essential qualities that salespeople work very hard to grow and to strengthen. So some of the things that you do in your job, like intake for a new client or your first engagement with a new client, that's all about building a new relationship from the ground up. And you do that over and over again, day in and day out. You build trust with a new client and with your current, maintain trust with your current clients through things like just good reflective listening, really listening to understand what the client is saying to you and what the client needs. Sometimes through specific trained skills like motivational interviewing. But really, you're all doing this all the time with your clients. You're listening for, what does this mean? And you're probably also doing this every day with your teams, with your families, with your friends. And then there are things like de-escalation, identifying when an emotional situation is potentially getting out of hand for a client, or intervening in a crisis, whether that's with one human being or multiple human beings involved, which really is the skill of identifying something that is happening with another human being and coming up with an effective approach to address that other human beings or multiple people's emotional experience. Trying to figure out what is motivating this, right? Where is this coming from? What is the need in this moment? And then I think we tell you all this a lot, but really we see you as the ultimate problem solvers. What you do every day in your job is identify, this is a challenge, right? How do I work with my client to overcome this challenge? What tools do I have that might apply, that I can offer? As you'll see as we go through the salesperson skills, all of this stuff, which I hope is, at least some of it, is recognizable to you regardless of your role in your agency, is really well aligned with what salespeople are always striving to do. So what are those salespeople skills? We know from the literature out there and the research that we've done that companies across all sorts of fields spend a lot of time and money training salespeople in some of the core qualities that are inherent in your work. They salespeople also spend sort of intentionally spend time learning and practicing closing strategies and sales strategies. So first, I'm going to go through some of these sort of core qualities and core skills that I think, again, you'll find very recognizable from your own work. And then I'm going to move to the specific strategies and techniques that the world of sales has developed that you may find are translatable to the work that you do. So generally, and I should note that these sort of overarching qualities and strategies are pulled from different different fields, different products, different philosophies and approaches to sales. But you'll find that they all really boil down to these sort of core core characteristics, core qualities. The first is asking questions, right? Being more interested in the other person than you are in getting the information out about your product or about your program. What you're looking for is what is the need or the desire in this potential customer, this potential buyer, or this potential landlord. You're listening for what are they looking for, and then you're thinking about, of all the things I know about my program, what are the most likely to hook them? What can I offer them based on what I'm hearing? In order to hear, you have to ask the questions. So for example, before, if you're talking to a landlord, before diving in and sharing all of this great information about your program, which might seem like the first obvious step to just say, look, I have all this information about my program. Let me tell you, you're going to love it. Something like, I'm super excited to tell you about my program, but first I'd really love to hear about some of your experiences being a landlord. Have you ever worked with a program like this before, and what was that like? And do you have any concerns going in? Just so I have a sense of where you're coming from. With the right landlord in the right situation, that might be a much more effective approach than giving them a laundry list of all of the wonderful things your program can offer. Salespeople are always working to build their ability to listen to understand, and to listen beyond an immediate reaction or just the keywords that someone is saying. To stop talking and to really hear what someone is saying, because that's where you're going to get the true needs and the true gaps that you can help fill. The big thing here is don't assume the concern, right? If you are talking with a landlord, for example, and they're talking about, in the past, I've had issues with clients making a lot of noise and damage to the unit, and I really just don't want to have to bother with that. Hearing that word damage may trigger, oh, okay, they're concerned about damage. I can offer them a risk mitigation fund, or I can offer to cover the payment of the damage. But listening deeper to what they're saying, it's not necessarily the damage that they're concerned about, it's the hassle of dealing with the damage. So a more targeted thing to offer them might be, we work with our clients on tenancy skills in order to prevent things like that. And if damage ever happens, not only can we cover the damage, but we can arrange for the repairs, if that's something that you're programmed to do and it's appropriate to offer. So the example is just really listening to what is the specific concern. Salespeople, like you, are always striving to be problem solvers. Again, it's about what is that buyer's challenge, what's or their priorities, what's keeping them from saying yes, and then you can work back from there. What are the things that might address that for them? This next one may feel like an obvious and low bar, right? Be courteous, be respectful. Possibly because dealing with people respectfully and courteously is second nature to you all at this point. But it is something that we all do actively, to communicate with people respectfully, to be polite, to be courteous. And one of the reasons that customer service is so effective, that the manner and the approach that people who are in customer service, why that matters so much is that human beings like to feel respected, and they like to feel like the person they're talking to is happy to be talking to them. So just a reminder that just being your charming and courteous self can actually go a long way with an initial interaction with the landlord. And then finally knowing your product and service. This is the foundation of everything that a salesperson is doing. All of the stuff we've talked about, the listening to identify needs, the asking questions, all of that is to get at what should I be offering? Of all of the things that I could offer about my program, what are the things I should target? That really means that you, as the best expert of your program, need to know all of those things. And even if you don't, right? Even if a landlord is asking you a question, well, can you offer this? Or is this something that you do with your tenants to help address my issue? And you don't know the answer to that question, that's also fine. But the goal is to never leave the landlord with just an I don't know, right? You just don't want to leave them hanging with I don't know the answer to that. You can say I don't know, but it's to give an example from something that we at home base are trained to do and practice to do, because we get a lot of questions about a lot of topics, and we always want to find an answer, but we don't always have it in our head, right? That is a great question, right? Because that is our way of respecting. That is a great question, and it should have an answer. So that is a great question. I'm going to get you an answer, and I'm just going to check with my program manager or my lead. That's a great question. I'm going to look into that, and I'll get back to you in the next couple of days. So if you don't know an answer, that's totally fine. You still can get that information as the expert about the program. Okay. So I want to pause here. I haven't seen any questions in the chat, but I want to pause for any thoughts that all brought up. I kind of threw a lot of stuff at you, and I may have made some assumptions about how you see your role and your job and the skills that you bring to it. So I just want to check in. Did that resonate with you all? Do you see the connection between your job as a program staff, as whether you're a case manager or an advocate, a housing specialist, the connection between that and being a salesperson? Yeah, I'm getting a yes. I saw some nods on the videos as well. Yeah, okay, so that seems to make sense. Is there anybody where that's a little dissonant to you? Like, oh, I don't want to be a salesperson. That is not helpful. Not that complicated. Cool, awesome. Yeah. So my next question then is, what generally, and we don't have a specific landlord here to question, but what generally do your landlords want? What do they need? What are the most common things, or maybe what are the weirdest things? Just what have you experienced? Responsiveness. Yep. Yeah. Income. Okay. Yeah. The responsiveness is a big point we hear a lot, that I want to know that I can contact someone at the program and they'll be there, and I won't be hanging on for days. And then income, especially now, right? Knowing that you're going to be able to fill this unit and get the rent regularly and reliably. Clarification of roles. Yeah, Bridget, thanks for saying that. I think that if you don't mind typing a little bit more, like what kind of clarification of the roles within your staff do they look for, do you think?
I'd rather talk. I don't type that fast.
Go for it.
Usually if a landlord is in touch with us, they want to know how about the responsiveness. Do they call us? Do they call a different case manager? Sometimes how well we know the vet. Basically, who can they reach out to? Sorry about that. If they have questions or concerns. For us specifically, we help with rent and rental arrears. and utilities. So they want to know, is this a one-time thing? Do I call you if the vet is late, or do I go to the vet? Just the whole process when they're initially working with us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a great point I wanted to hone in on, because clarification of what can you do. I liked the point about who should I, when should I reach out directly to the vet? When should I call you? And then sometimes you might, some programs, you might have multiple people interacting with the landlord. You might have a housing specialist or a landlord engagement person and a case manager, and knowing who actually is my contact for what. Yeah, having a direct point of contact, feeling comfortable, being assured that the property will not be destroyed. I feel like that's probably something that you all are talking to landlords about a lot. And that's a point that might be actually a little trickier, because you can't actually control what the tenant is going to do. And you don't have a crystal ball. All you can do is tell the landlord what you're going to do to support the tenant and to prevent that. A responsible tenant that works, right? And I think that calls out that sometimes landlords are going to ask for things in a tenant that your client, that you're not going to ask for necessarily in a client, you can't necessarily promise in a client, and that, that I don't think a responsible tenant that works is an example of something that's inappropriate, but sometimes landlords are going to want something from a client that is inappropriate. Like, I don't want a client with children, or I don't want a client with disabilities. That are going to disrupt the community, and those are things that are not things that landlords are allowed to care about, but we do. Yeah, contact and being responsive. Yeah, and the length of the program, wanting to know how long is this client going to have this safety net, for sure. Cool. All right, thanks. So those are all good things to keep in mind as we talk about some of these specific closing techniques. These are specific tools and approaches that salespeople tend to use. We've selected 4 here. If you're really interested in this, there's a lot of materials online that lay out a whole bunch of different closing techniques that salespeople use. We're going to focus on these 4. So the summary close, this is probably going to be really sort of recognizable to you. You might actually just do this naturally. And it's just the act of summarizing the benefits and the value that, in this case, your program is going to bring to the landlord. You may have talked about all of these things in a course of a conversation, but summing up at the end of the conversation can really help focus that landlord, that prospective landlord, or that prospective buyer on just reminding them everything they're going to get in a little neat package. And when you're talking about your programs, and obviously this is stuff we've largely learned from you all that works with landlords, but maybe you can offer upfront money for security deposits and last month rent, so to a certain amount. I think something that came up in the chat is reliable rent payments. They're going to get income, right? And you can guarantee that to a certain extent within the parameters of your program. That you're going to provide a program contact number. The tenant's going to receive support, that the tenant is going to be prepared for tenancy. And then, of course, any flexible funds or risk mitigation funds that are available. But whatever it was, and also focusing specifically on the things you're hearing from the landlord that they want, summarizing that up at the end to focus their attention on all of that. The next one is we call the now or never close. This also is probably going to be super familiar. It's the sale ends Sunday, right? Or last chance for this offer. And the reason that you see those ads and that salespeople use that strategy is that it works, creating a sense of urgency in addition to a perceived sort of additional value. It's really effective on our human brains and getting us to commit to something, to see the value in it. And in your situations with landlords, if you can say something like, if you can commit right now, I can offer you this additional benefit. It might, you might have flex funds for something like a signing bonus or to pay up front. If your program doesn't allow something like that, maybe it's, if you can commit now, I can, our client can move in by Wednesday. And you can start getting those rent payments starting Wednesday, right? Whatever it is that you think will benefit this, a little thing that will benefit the landlord, give them that sense of urgency. The conditional close is, I think, related to the now or never close, right? But it's more about, instead of creating a sense of urgency, it's more about giving the landlord permission to say yes, right? It's saying, well, I can see you're a little bit on the fence. You're maybe not ready to decide, but if I could get, in the case of a product, if I could guarantee delivery by Wednesday, would you be interested in placing your order today? Or I can see you're, a little bit on the fence, but if I could get some recommendations from other landlords, would you be willing to talk to them and then meet with me again? So giving them something that will give them permission to feel comfortable to address their concerns. And then at some point in the future, once that condition has been met, the understanding is they will commit. And the backwards close. This is, for me, the one that's a little bit odd in my head, but I have seen this work in the sort of sales arena, where you don't go in asking for, can I tell you everything about my program? Can you rent to my client? Or can you join our landlord partnership? It's coming in and saying, hey, I know that you have a lot of connections in the landlord community, the community here, the property management community, whatever. I was wondering if I could tell you a little bit about my program and see if you know anybody who might have units and be interested in this type of housing assistance program. It's a little bit similar to asking for an informational interview with a company that's in the field where you might like to work. This is something that a lot of my friends did when they were leaving school or switching jobs. You say, hey, can I ask you some questions about doing the job that you do? And maybe you want to get an opportunity to have a job interview with that person you're talking to, but you don't go in asking for an interview, you go in asking for some information about the job that they do. This is a similar concept. You're saying, you're acknowledging that the landlord has connections and networks, so you're sort of acknowledging their power to a certain extent, which everybody likes. You're putting it at ease because it doesn't feel like you're trying to sell to them, and they're going to hear all about your program. So just to go back to those 4, the summary close, you're summing everything up at the end. The now or never close, you're creating that sense of urgency. Like if you can commit to me right now, if you're willing to meet with my client, or if you're willing to rent to my client, I can do this for you. The conditional close, which is, again, the understanding is that they will commit at some point in the future as long as you can accomplish a particular condition, which gives you a focused to-do list and a guarantee of a landlord in the future. Or the backwards close. It's a much softer approach. It's saying, hey, I'd love to tell you about my program to see if you have any friends who would be interested, essentially. So before we jump into the role play, I just want to check in. How do those strike you? And particularly, do you see any that you already use? And do you see any that you would like to try, potentially?
I like the backwards close.
Mm-hmm. Has anybody ever used the backwards close before? No, not. Yeah, it looks like there's interest in trying that. Yeah, I think that
Makes
does.
I think it makes them feel like they about to miss out on something. So
Somebody
no,
else is gonna
not
get
you,
this.
but the people you know. Give me
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, and Morgan, I think you make a good point that the summary close is probably the most familiar. I'm seeing that some folks use a combination of these. And yeah, there's interest in the backwards close. Awesome. Well, we have, as Viola said, 2 very brave volunteers from Life Moves for these 2 role plays for the sales techniques. And for the first role play, we have Myrna Hardy, who's volunteered for our first scenario. And then I think I'm the landlord for this one, right, Viola and Lily? Is that right? Yes. Great. I knew that. So we are going to, Myrna, if you are ready, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Thank you so much for being willing to do this. So the way this will work is we'll go through the role play, maybe 5 minutes. We'll feel it out, but not too long, and then we'll stop and have a chance for Myrna and I to reflect, and then for some discussion if you all have. So be looking for things that you think work well. Things where you think there was an opportunity to engage differently with a landlord, and just any comments, any reflections that you have on the role plays. And then definitely give feedback, definitely give critique, but be kind to us actors. It's a tough life. So the scenario for these 2 role plays is all about just initial conversations with landlords, whether that is about engaging a landlord for a specific client, or whether it's about engaging a landlord just because they have a lot of units and you want to have that relationship for the future. So, shall we begin? Hi, Myrna.
Okay.
It's good to see you.
Hi.
So I'm interested to hear about your program. You reached out, and I'm glad you were able to find some time to talk.
Yes, well, first of all, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to speak with me. I was basically calling because I am working right now and kind of expanding my landlord pool, and wanted to see if I could maybe discuss some of my programs, see if you had any questions. I know that you have various units available for different sizes. But before I kind of get into that, I was wondering whether or not you've ever worked with any type of program, and if so, kind of what your experience was with that, whether it was good or maybe not so good, just to kind of start from there.
I have worked with a subsidy program. To be honest, it wasn't a great experience. I mean, the tenants in the subsidy program just, we had issues with damage to the unit. We had issues with guests staying over excessively, disturbance to the other tenants. Eventually, I sort of pulled out, and I haven't really worked with a subsidy provider. But yeah, I don't know if your program is the same type of program, or what that might look like, what your tenants are like. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that information. I'm sorry to hear you didn't have a very pleasant experience, but I did want to let you know that the program that I am currently working with right now.
I've lost my partner.
I can pick up.
Thank you, Morgan.
Of course. She may have just gotten some connect issues.
I'm sure.
So
It
I'm actually the property owner. So that was the landlord that you were speaking with. So
actually,
currently,
I'm the landlord for this one.
oh, I'm
So
sorry.
You're gonna sub out for
I'm
your
the case manager. I was
Yeah.
trying to kick you out of here, Eli. Okay, let me read what my role is really quick. So I am actually the program director. That was my case manager that you were just speaking with. Um, so we see that you do have multiple units, and I'm sorry that you had, some poor experience in the past. I wanted to see, have you ever heard of Life Moves before?
I hadn't heard of Life Moves until you reached out. No.
Okay. So Life Moves, we provide several different programs. And within our programs, we actually provide case management. So I heard that that was something, that you had mentioned in the past that didn't work out well for you. Well, within our program, it's an 18-month program, or up to 18 months, excuse me. And throughout the whole length of the program, we are working with our clients on, working on rebuilding their credit, also working on any mitigating issues, between you and the client, vice versa. We're also working on, we also work with the tenants on maintaining the housing after the subsidy is over. So sustaining the household that they're currently living in. And if that doesn't work, we are working with the tenants to either relocate or possibly, seek other opportunities.
So you
Is
said
this something that, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
you said you work with just like managing issues with the tenants. Would you like show up whenever I had an issue and like be there to talk to? How do you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, considering COVID, we are taking those precautions. However, if there are any, instances where you would like to meet, if I need to come in person, I most definitely will meet you at the facility or wherever you'd like.
Okay. And obviously, we're all all of our buildings require masks, require social distancing. Is that something that your tenants are educated about? Are they?
Yes, yeah,
willing to do that?
definitely. It's something that we pride ourselves on. Safety is our number one concern. So definitely, we will be case managing them and making sure that they have all the PPE equipment that they may need. Masks, we have those at our admin office, and so definitely.
Okay.
And then also, Eli, I had seen that your property had been on the market for some time. Are you having, any issues on, selling your, getting your apartment out there?
Right now, we've never had a unit on the market this long, and right now we are seeing a bit longer, but that's partly because we're still looking for the same type of tenants we would be looking for normally, and we haven't really lowered our screening for things like credit and income and things like that. It's just,
Yeah, another great perk that we offer within our agency is direct deposit. So, if you are willing to rent to, some of our tenants or to some of our clients, we can, provide you with a 24 to 48 hour turnaround to get you that check in hand for their deposit and first month's rent. We can also continue to do direct deposit moving forward if it's something that you'd be interested in. So it's for sure money. It comes with case management. And so a lot of great perks. And, if you're interested, please let me know.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely think about it. I appreciate all the information and thanks for reaching out.
Thank you.
Morgan, thank you so much.
I tried. I haven't done cold calling in a while, so that was a good
thank you
way
so
to
much.
grease my wheels.
Do you just from just your top of the head response, do you have any, how do you feel like that went? I know it was a really short snippet. You were jumping in.
It was definitely nerve-wracking. This morning, me and my staff actually met to kind of go over the role playing. And so I started off with the Columbo close. And that's where you kind of hit them with the, well, by the way, we offered, so I tried to do that, but then I seen that I was leaning towards a different kind of closing technique. So I definitely would say that one technique may not always work with the landlord. So kind of just being aware of who you're speaking with, what will definitely help figure out what route you're going to take.
Yeah. Sort of a dodge and weave, roll with the punches,
Exactly.
be flexible in response. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I have to say, from my perspective, I was, as a pretending to be a landlord, the idea of like the sort of last sort of approach you were taking, the idea of getting that unit filled when I hadn't filled it, I was probably still a little bit concerned about, just like the tenant themselves and their credit history, but the fact that you were able to provide just money in the bank account every month was very attractive to me.
Thanks.
What about our audience? Did you see anything that you thought that you in the moment thought was particularly effective?
I agree with the responding to the money concern, because the landlord brought it up as a reason for the I guess the openings. So that was like at the forefront of the land or the owner's mind. One thing I did think though was when in introduction, when the salesperson, the case manager had said that, I understood you have dealt with, well, have you dealt with other programs like this before? And they had a negative experience. I would have asked what they would have thought made their experience better, because that would have given me more insight. It could have been the case management, could have been the credit, could have been whatever. And then, and like she did apologize, I'm sorry to hear that happened for you. Let me tell you a little bit about our program, and then go in and then see what unfolds from there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's a great suggestion. I'm thinking of that in the moment, to be able to, again, ask that question and be able to listen for more information from the landlord. It's really great. Any other thoughts? Any other things that, maybe if it had been a longer conversation, or in the moment, something that you might have tried?
Another thing, I'm sorry, because we're with the new GPD program, this is on the forefront of our mind. So one thing we talked about was, like, because we're creating the program from the ground up, is when approaching landlords and recruiting our vets at the same time, letting them know that we have like a waiting list. So, if you sign up today, I can move someone in within a week, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Letting them know that we're armed and ready to pay with someone who can fill that vacancy if you're willing to work with us as a carrot.
Yeah, definitely, especially right now. Okay. Any other thoughts in the chat, or if you'd prefer to unmute yourself, I think you can do that too. Yeah, so some specific information, like closing with, if you can sign a W-9, I can have a check within 48 hours. Yeah. If that's a kind of timeline you can commit to, particularly things like HQS, but if you can commit to that kind of timeline, I think that's be super effective, for sure. Okay.
Sorry, I apologize. My computer had a mind of its own and just wanted to reboot right in the middle. But I think one of the other things I would kind of add is also, maybe after asking them if they're willing to sign, I can have that check offering. I can even bring that check down in person. That way you can meet me face to face. So that way they kind of put a face to the person that they'll actually be dealing with, who they have been speaking to. I feel like it just kind of builds like a better connection. Just the fact that you're offering to come out that and hand deliver that check sometimes is really, and I've had landlords who've, come back and said, you know what, for me, it really helped the fact that you were willing to drive out here, give me that check, and then, take the time to come out and meet me. And, so sometimes that can help as well. I mean, I know it has for me.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your input as audience. Thank you, Myrna and Morgan, and you're not responsible for controlling your technology. So we have one other role play in this section, and we have Rosa Cervantes is going to be our program staff for this role play, and then Byla, are you the landlord for this one? No. Lily, are you the landlord for this one?
I am.
Yay. So again, this is an initial engagement with the landlord. In this case, I'll let you know that the context is that Rosa has a particular client that she's looking for a unit for at the moment, or helping with the housing search for. And you just jump in whenever you're ready, folks.
Hi, everyone. Okay, so let me jump in. Ring, ring, ring. Hello?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Rosa, and I saw your posting on Craigslist for a one-bedroom apartment available in the owner's home. Are you the owner?
Oh, yeah, I am. Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you. So I have a few questions about the unit, but before I dive in, can you please tell me more about the unit, the qualities or requirements that you're looking for in a tenant?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I actually haven't been a landlord before. This was my house, and he recently passed away, and so I live in the house, and I've got this one bedroom, and just looking for someone. I've had roommates before, so it'll be a little bit of that kind of situation, and just want to find a good fit. You sound really nice, so that it's a good start, I guess.
Well, thank you. Actually, allow me to tell you a little bit more about myself. So I'm actually a housing specialist, and I work for an agency called Life Moves. Have you heard of the agency before?
No, I haven't.
So Life Moves provides interim housing and supportive services for homeless. I'm actually reaching out to you on behalf of a particular client. I have a few other clients, but particularly this listing sounded ideal for one of my clients that I have. He has actually allowed me to speak on his behalf and explain the barriers he has faced to obtain permanent housing. So I do want to talk to you about that. But again, I wanted to hear about what is it that you're looking for in a tenant, if there's any special requirements, and then dive in and explain a little bit more about what he's also looking for. Make sure you guys are a great fit, because if you're going to be living with him in the property, I also want to make sure you're comfortable, he's comfortable. And if that's not a great fit, I do have other clients, and there's other clients in the agency that might be a better fit for this unit. So if you can tell me a little more, and I can also explain a little more about the client, please go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I'm pretty quiet. Definitely looking for someone who's pretty quiet, pretty mellow. Definitely don't want any drama, or, anyone who's acting too crazy or like getting high or anything like that. That would not, this is my house, and, want to keep it pretty mellow, but pretty easygoing. Otherwise, just want someone who can really respect the space. And
Got it.
yes, don't want anybody who's gonna, be too challenging to live with, since I'm living here too.
Yes, I understand, especially if you're sharing common spaces. That's very important. Okay, so this client that I'm speaking, he's a male, if you don't have a problem with that. He's actually been sober for 3 months. He has a history of alcohol and opiate abuse. However, he has recently graduated a program, and he's been great with budgeting. So he saved up to $3,000 so far in this 3 months. He's been employed for the past 6 months, and he's been doing great. No complaints on that. He's increased his credit score and still working on increasing it and getting rid of some of the negative items that he had from his past, again, challenges and barriers that he had. So now soon his temporary housing is going to be ending in 2 weeks. So I am prioritizing him, finding him a place to live. He's ready for this. He has showed commitment. If he's willing to abide by the rules of the lease agreement, or anything that you make him sign, he's willing to pay his rent on time on a monthly basis, and is looking for a long-term, maybe 6 months to a year. Is this something that you would consider, that you work with us, with the agency? Or, I mean, if there's any issues, there might be other clients that you might be interested in. Please tell me what your thoughts are.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't, it's sounds like he's done a lot of work and I don't want to, not be helpful. I guess I'm just concerned if he hasn't been sober that long, that means a lot to me. And I just don't know if he's been living anywhere else on his own without, having that kind of support. I guess that maybe doesn't sound like such a great fit. And I'm going to be relying on the rent, to pay my mortgage. So this isn't, I want to be helpful, but I don't think I can. Maybe it doesn't sound like a great fit. Sorry.
Right. Again, we have other different clients that if I can highlight, if that's one of the issues, if it would make you more comfortable, if, like, again, he has some savings, he has stable employment. Also, if you feel more comfortable meeting him, that would be something that you guys could also do. But if you want to go ahead and, speak to him or get, I can meet you in person, maybe we can talk a little bit more about that and see also, we would be able to work on maybe having, you could be a point of contact. If you don't want to work directly with that client, again, there's other clients that you could also, there's other clients that maybe would be a better fit for you.
All right. Unfortunately, I'm going to cut you all off there, but thank you so much. Thank you so much, Rosa.
I'm sorry, my program doesn't have a lot of incentives to offer.
Yeah. No,
oh my God.
We're giving you such a tiny time. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Lily, you play a tough first-time landlord super well, and Rosa, just thank you. So starting with our role players, Rosa, what do you have any reflections on that? Like what did you think, what were you trying to do? What did you think went well?
Towards the end, I was like, okay, well, it's about the money. She's worried about the money. So that's when I got a little nervous. And I was like, okay, that's something I need to work on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And again, it's such a short time that we're giving you. But yeah, definitely identifying what Lily was putting off as her main concerns. Lily, do you have any reflections on that? How did that feel?
I thought you did a good job, based on my, I would have had zero idea what you were talking, so you did a really good job sort of dialing back and being like, oh, gee, you have no idea who I am and what I do. So I thought you did a really good job just like rolling with that, being super pleasant. I thought I'd be mean and throw you the curveball of like, you sound great. You want to meet up and you can move on in at the beginning. And I thought you did a really good job too of straddling that line between sort of pushing a little bit gently forward on the person you're really looking for while making sure that that there's like other opportunities possible. And I think that's a hard line to walk because you don't want to give up on the person that you're looking for right this second, but also you want to try to, know when to hold them, fold them, etc. So I thought you did a really nice job just being like very present and active with your suggestions, and definitely like imagining my character wanting to meet someone in person. I think would be really important since I don't have any framework for like, having tenants or having people I don't know live in my backyard. So I think that was a really good way to go. So nice job.
So audience, what came up for you observing that? Things that you thought were really good moves, things that were effective, things maybe that given more time you might have tried to get to, approaches you might have taken.
I like the part when she suggested a meeting between the tenant and the owner.
Yeah, that personal face-to-face connection.
Yeah, I loved how she read, the conversation, because if you guys seen the role play, we didn't know what the landlord's role was going to be.
Yeah.
We didn't know that she was going to push back. We didn't know that she, is a widow. So that really threw me a curveball. And so I really, like the fact that Rosa didn't kind of settle. She went, any avenue she could go until she got that stop from Eli. But I think she was getting Lily to say yes. But yeah, I really liked how she didn't settle.
I was caving. 30 seconds more, you would have had me.
Yes.
Any other reflections? What else were you all seeing? One of the things that this brought up for me that I want to talk about, because I think it calls forward to our second session, so I'm going to plug that for a little bit. We've also gotten a little bit of permission from Viola to take a little extra time, is the question of disclosing information about a client, right? And that can be really important to a landlord. And it can be like, we've heard from you that it's what to disclose about a client and when, who should do that. Is can be a tough decision. And Rosa, am I right in assuming that in your backstory you had talked to the client about what type of information you were going to share with landlords and things like that?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So there's some clients that want me to share that personal information and some that want me to refrain from it. So that's a very important point that I like to check with them first. There's some like I don't want them to know that this was my past. And that's why I highlighted the fact that my client allowed me to speak on his behalf.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's I think one of the huge parts of this is having those conversations with clients about what are you comfortable sharing, what are landlords actually allowed to consider, and what is always none of their business. What might landlords care about, things like that. And so our next landlord engagement session is going to, part of that will focus on supporting tenants to be prepared and how to advocate for themselves, how to have those conversations with tenants about it. It's a really good call forward to that. All right, well, thank you. We've done our role plays for this session, and you all are beautiful, and I appreciate your participation. Hopefully by the next time we do this, we can all be in person and I can make you all role play with each other, because that's what we would normally do. We'd normally have you all participate in role plays in small groups. I will say that if role playing is something that you think might work for you and your team, it's something that you can do on your own. You can pull scenarios from your own experience, and you can do these little practices. We find that role plays can be really intimidating and scary, for me in particular, always, but they can also be a really good chance to practice these approaches and practice these conversations in a way that really is low stakes before you go out and do that with landlords, particularly for folks who are new to the work or new to a team. So highly recommended. And at this point, I'm going to pass over to Byla for our next section.
Great, thank you. So stepping a little bit past some of this initial landlord engagement, recruitment stuff, and into some how to navigate some of the communications and other issues with landlords that can arise when you're initially housing your client. So next slide, please. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is housing quality standards inspections. So if your program requires housing quality standards inspections, this can be both a selling point for landlords initially, but also simultaneously sort of a source of tension. I don't know if this sounds right to you. I'm sure not all of your programs require housing quality standards inspections, but if they do, I think they can be sort of both a blessing and a curse. So next slide, please. One of the first things I wanted to talk about is how you can make the inspections a selling point. So you might need to do a little bit of work to convince a landlord that these inspections are worth their time. The slide provides a little bit of some pointers for showing how inspections can benefit landlords, especially in a world where, if I were to move into an apartment unsupported by HUD funded program, a landlord wouldn't need to go through an inspection. So this is sort of an extra hoop, right? You're asking the landlords to jump through. So one of the ways that you can make an inspection a selling point to a landlord is to point out that this allows them the opportunity to have a way to document the existing conditions in the unit, right? And this can be really important, especially for landlords who are concerned about damage to their apartment later, just to have that kind of baseline. Everyone's on the same page. This is what the unit was like when the tenant moved in, just so that this helps assure landlords that if there's some damages later on, that there won't be any disputes, or there'll be fewer disputes because everyone agreed that this was sort of the baseline condition of the unit. This is also a landlord education opportunity. So for a lot of new or smaller landlords, they might not know what's required by law in terms of a unit's condition. As we all know, there's no class that landlords have to pass in order to start renting their units. So you're there to help. And this is a chance for them, like I said, to learn about local laws and regulations for subsidized properties that can help them going forward with other programs. So you're kind of able to sell yourself as an educator, right? This is a service you're doing. You're teaching them about things they're going to need to comply with. Another thing that you can do is you can talk about annual inspections if your program requires those as well. Annual inspections ensure that issues don't fall through the cracks. We all know that the longer you're in a unit, the more kind of wear and tear there is. And landlords might appreciate having the opportunity to kind of have that check-in once a year to see, like, are there any issues that are ongoing, any things that we can help address to make sure that they don't get worse over time. Another thing is that the annual inspections you can sort of sell to the landlords as, this is you showing them that you care about their property, right? You recognize that this is an investment for them, that, this is a really important part of their, the way that they earn their money. And so you're essentially just letting them know that you care about the unit as well, and you're going to be there to make sure that it maintains itself in good shape. Okay, and lastly, just a couple of extra tips that, this is an opportunity for you also to just highlight any mitigation funds that you might have. For example, like if you have a fund that helps pay for damages, if damages come up, things like that, just mentioning those as a way to also sell your program, that not only are you staying on top of conditions issues, but that you also can help them address any conditions issues that might arise. Does anyone have questions so far, or additional ways that they use these inspections as a selling point when they're talking about them with landlords? Cool. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so a few tips for how to communicate with landlords about inspections. The goals of these communications with landlords are basically, you want to set clear expectations about what you're going to inspect so that they know exactly what needs to be in order. But also they need to know what's expected of them after inspections occur, right? What steps are they going to need to take once you come back with the results of the inspections? So the first tip is obviously just preparing the landlord for what to expect. So telling them what you're going to look at. One tool that can be really useful is showing them the inspection form if your program has one. I'll talk more about how that tool, or how that form can be used as a tool in a minute. You're also going to want to talk to them about how long the inspection is going to take, and also any regulatory requirements. So for example, if your program is CoC funded, the unit's going to need to pass inspection before you can cut any checks for the unit. But also if it's CoC funded, if it's an annual inspection, if the unit fails, they have 30 days to make any repairs. And then at that point, if they failed to make repairs, then you can't use CoC funds for the unit. So just setting up really clearly, like, this is about getting the money. So you're going to need to respond to these inspections. Another thing that can be really useful in talking about the inspections, I think, is just reminding them that this is federal law. This is not like your program saying that this needs to happen. It can kind of remove some of the bad cop sort of feeling about being a case manager. This is not something that you just decided that their unit needed to do. This is something that's actually required by law for the program. Making sure that you document conditions well, especially any issues, so that you have a clear record to rely upon when you're talking to landlords is really important. Just making sure that you have all your ducks in a row. Like if you have maybe pictures can help communicate issues and document them, drawings, etc. Going back to sharing inspections forms with clients, with landlords, we've heard that this has been a really, really useful tool because, again, it explains to them, these are all of the different things we're going to be looking at, but it also shows them that this is a standardized official process that is not something that you made up, it's not something that your program made up, and it shows them that everyone is treated the same, right? This is the inspection form that we use for every single unit. Everyone is treated the same, and it shows that you're taking this seriously and that you're keeping records about the inspections. One last thing that we've also heard is that sometimes people have been able to, after inspections, use like small cosmetic issues with the unit as a bargaining chip to lower rent. I don't know if that's something that you have been seeing at all, but if there are issues like there's marks on the wall or something like that, things that aren't safety issues, but that are just more like, that old carpet, it would be nice to replace that, like just kind of saying, okay, well, you don't need to repave the walls, but can you, deduct X amount from the rent? So we've also heard that that can be a good way to engage with landlords around these inspections. And just one other thing about that, if you're going to do that, make sure, obviously with your client, that it's okay that they're not fixing that thing. Like obviously if the client's like, no, I need my walls to be painted, and that's, something that they want, then obviously you're not going to bargain around that. Does anyone else have any other tips that they use for talking to landlords about these inspections, or have any other like concerns that have come up with these communications? Do these usually go pretty smoothly? Are landlords usually like, this is fine, it's not a problem? I know this is like a super exciting topic. Everyone loves talking about housing quality inspections. But if it's
one thing that we mention is that we're not housing authority. So even though it doesn't pass, under CoC, we wouldn't be eligible to pay. It's just one thing that, at least we're not housing authority. So it's they're really receptive when we say that. Sorry if anyone is on here from housing authority, but it works for us. We let them know that we're going in there doing an inspection, for our clients to make sure that they're living in a habitable space. It's just another, incentive for the landlords. So yeah, luckily we haven't gotten any pushback for using that phrase. So
that's great. Yeah.
This is Jeremiah from Abode. I know when I was a housing specialist, I would do the same thing. And I think the positive thing about it is I would just say that it moves a little quicker to get them paid, which is what they really care about anyway. So like it's a little bit different than Section 8. Our process, it takes 24 to 48 hour turnaround. So you'll have to check much faster than you necessarily have to wait until the first of the month to get paid. Like I could pay you now. So that usually helps.
Got it. Awesome. All right. Well, okay. So moving on to the next section. Next slide, please. So now we're going to talk just really briefly about some issues that can arise with landlord engagement at lease signing. And I'm not sure how big of an issue this is for you all, but I've definitely seen it with some leases and in clients' files, and I've heard that this can come up at times at lease signing with landlords. So two of your goals at lease signing, you have a lot to do at lease signing, I'm sure, but two of them are going to be obviously to make sure that the lease contains any required terms that are part of the grant funding stream that you have. So for example, if the unit is CoC funded, all the leases are going to need to be for at least 1 year initially and then be automatically renewable. Different programs might have different other lease requirements. We're going to want to make sure that you know what those required lease terms are and you're spotting them in the leases. But another thing that seems to be coming up fairly regularly is that you want to make sure, especially if your program is housing first, and hopefully all of them are, that you need to make sure that the leases and any addendums that the landlord wants to tack on are not overly restrictive or otherwise problematic. A lot of landlords may, and not for necessarily bad reason, want to tack on a lot of additional addendums and sort of house rules and things like that that try to dictate what the tenant can and can't do within their own unit. And I'm talking about things that go beyond sort of normal lease terms, but these are terms that are really designed to get at like private behaviors that the landlord doesn't like, or sort of concerns that have to do with, maybe past tenant issues that they've had. So for example, saying you can never have any alcohol in your unit, or if you're in a drug program, I need to see the certificate of your completion, or you're not allowed to have a sexual relationship with anyone else, in the building. Things that are really kind of like beyond what's normal to have in a lease that are, potentially really infringing on the client's personal rights, and also make it so it's very high barrier and could potentially put the client at risk of being put out. So, obviously if your client is okay with these terms and you feel like they can be successful in the unit regardless, then that's fine. But these can be problematic if, like I said, they're setting the client up for failure. Or if, perhaps they can lead to the client being easily evicted. So there are a couple of different things, a couple of different tips that we have for ways that you can address this. Obviously, the best case scenario is that you try to ask the landlord to waive the requirement of whatever lease addendum, or maybe you can agree to, cross out certain terms that you think are really sort of beyond the scope of what's reasonable. Another thing you can do is try to amend the terms just so they're a little bit more reasonable. So for example, if one of the terms is that they're not supposed to have alcohol in the unit, it could be, no intoxication in common spaces or something like that. So sort of narrowing the issue so that it's actually reasonable and related to what the landlord's concern is, and is not, again, making it so hard for your client to remain housed. Worst case scenario, you can always counsel your client on the addendum and really go through those terms with them that you're concerned about and figure out ways to try to support them around complying with those terms. And again, you can also always walk away if it seems like it's just not a good fit. For example, in Lily's case, maybe not the best fit for that client for various reasons, but something to bear in mind. So does anyone have questions about this situation or any additional tips that you would add? This is a common issue. Or have you ever had a situation where you put a client into a unit with a bunch of these additional constraints and then it backfired, or how you solved that situation?
I don't think that is typical. I think you have every blue moon a situation where you have a landlord who doesn't really know the laws and they try to add these addendums. In the past, we had a landlord who wanted to make an agreement in order to lower the rent. She wanted the client to do work in lieu of her lowering the rent. And we had to tell her, like, that's, not legal. Legally, you can't do that. You can't, if you want to lower the rent to help this guy out, then cool, but we can't put that in a lease as an addendum to say that you're now renting this studio to him at $1,500, although you wanted $17 for it because you want now for him to work these hours. So, we have crazy things that pop up here and there, but I don't think that's a consistency across the board because most people follow whatever clauses are listed in the lease or whatever addendums that are there already. So.
Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add? Any cautionary tales or any advice, any thoughts? I've done some monitoring of client files before, just to check and see that everyone's in compliance for different programs. And some of the things I've seen have been really, really crazy. And it's just, yeah, it's pretty intense once you start seeing the multiple addendums popping up. So I'm glad to hear that that's not necessarily a big issue in San Mateo County.
But I think also, so the goal of signing at least those two things, I think it might come up later, is just making sure the client knows that they're overly restrictive, like this is not the norm and you don't have to accept that legally. Because some, may think this is the only way I can get into it, or this might be standard because they never signed a lease before.
Right. Yeah. A lot of kind of education about this is not normal. This is something you can accept it. We can help you figure out, how to make sure that you're in compliance, but it's also not necessarily something you have to agree to go into on. Yeah. Right. Oh yeah.
I was just gonna thank Bridget for bringing up that point of like client education and empowerment, because that's super important.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so the next slide, we're just going to talk quickly about situations that we've heard of where landlords for HUD-funded units sometimes have questions and concerns about signing addendums required under the Violence Against Women Act, or VAWA. It sounds like this is an issue that comes up more often at recertifications for people where tenants have already been in the building for a year and you're saying, okay, well, now you have to sign this addendum. But in case this is something that's come up for you, we just wanted to offer a few tips because, again, this is a landlord engagement issue that can come up. So the first tip is, I think, really relates back to Eli's portion of the training, which is you have to get in the head of the landlord and kind of figure out, okay, what is the thing that they're actually concerned about, sort of pinpointing what is the hook, right? Some landlords may just see an additional piece of paper and say, nope, I'm not going to sign anything else. I don't do that. Some landlords might see the word domestic violence and they may get concerned or scared about that. They may just misunderstand what the addendum means entirely. So first of all, just understanding what is it? Is this about any paperwork at all? Or is this about this paperwork in particular? What is it about this paperwork that's troubling to you, etc.? I think always giving them a little bit of background about why VAWA is important is a good idea. Explaining that it's about preventing housing discrimination against survivors of domestic violence. Also explaining that it doesn't mean that you can't evict survivors of domestic violence. This addendum isn't saying, you have to agree to house this person, come hell or high water. Explaining that it's a limited document and it just ensures that landlords don't evict or deny housing to survivors of domestic violence because of things that their abusers have done. Also, again, explaining this is a HUD requirement, that in order for HUD to fund the unit, a VAWA addendum has to be on file, because if HUD comes to your program and they look through your file and they do an audit and it's not there, that could jeopardize your funding. So sort of explaining why this is important, that it's really a HUD requirement, and it's about you maintaining your funding, I think, can be important as well. It's also, I think, useful to explain that VAWA applies to them regardless of whether they sign the addendum or not. The law is the law, and refusing to sign the addendum doesn't take away the effect of the law. So they still have to comply with all of our VAWA requirements regardless of whether they sign the addendum or not. All the addendum really does is it memorializes the law in writing so that everyone is on notice about what's required. It doesn't create any additional tenants' rights or obligations on the landlord. It might also be useful to point out to them that they're already required to comply with a very similar California state law. That's California Civil Code section 116.3, which basically says that a landlord shall not terminate a tenancy or fail to renew a tenancy based on an act of domestic violence. So essentially, the addendum really is just a piece of paper that is going to allow you to continue to get funding so that they can continue to get paid. It may also be helpful for you to reassure the landlord that you're going to be there to help if in the future there is any domestic violence in the unit, if there's any issue, that you're there to provide ongoing support to the client, to help them relocate if necessary. Again, this would be a good time to mention any mitigation funds that you have, because a lot of times when landlords are concerned about domestic violence, they're really concerned about damage in the unit. So helping, remind them that you have those funds might be useful as well. And again, just lastly, providing them with information and resources about domestic violence. I think a lot of times people who've been working in social services for a long time forget that not everyone hears about domestic violence every day, and not everyone has been trained on what domestic violence is and what it isn't and how prevalent it is. So just saying, I have some resources for you, some information. If you want to learn more about what domestic violence is, and also maybe just letting them know that if there is an issue, again, you're there to help and you can help refer the tenant to assistance. So does anyone have questions about that before we move on? Does anyone, is this, again, just curious, is this an issue that people have been having with getting these signed for those of you in programs that require them? I'm really glad if that's not an issue. That would be super awesome. So, cool. All right, so now we are going to move on to some role plays that have to do with navigating these initial logistics. And so the first role play is going to be Jeremiah from Abode playing the case manager. And I think it's going to be Lily, again, our tough as nails landlord, playing the landlord. And in this role play, the case manager and the landlord are discussing some extra lease terms at lease signing. So with that, take it away.
Viola, I think my notes say that you're the landlord for this one.
Oh, I'm the landlord on this one, am I? Oh, okay, sorry. I had
Nice try, pal. You almost got me.
Sorry.
Scrambling.
Okay, yeah, so I am the landlord then. All right, Jeremiah, are you there?
Yeah.
I think
issues, but I'm here.
we've been hit with the connection issues fairy again.
Hello.
Hi, yeah, can you hear me okay?
If you want to try hopping back off and hopping right back on, I'll let you back in lickety split. Yes.
We can also start with the final role play and come back. If you think a little time would be helpful, Jeremiah.
Yeah, maybe we should go ahead and do that.
Then I am the landlord, Viola.
I
You win this battle.
You're unskilled program staff person.
Okay. And Jeremiah, if you do want to call back, I will let you in while being a landlord.
So the role play we're going to be doing is around HQS inspections and talking to landlords about those. Sounds like that's something that you all don't run into a whole lot of issues with, but I know it's also something that you're probably doing a lot. So you'll get a chance to see me role play something that I am probably not very good at. So pick me apart, right? Use it an opportunity to critique. Really tear into me. Okay.
I have my different landlord hat on.
Yes.
So you know I'm a different landlord.
Do you hear me now?
Oh, there.
Yes.
Hey.
We can.
Yes. I will take my landlord hat off.
Whoa, we can do ours. We'll do ours.
You do both? Okay.
If you don't mind, Jeremiah, and then since we got rolling, and I don't know if I can keep myself up again. We'll come back to Jeremiah and Viola for the last role play. Cool. Hi, Lily. How's it going?
Oh, I'm okay, Eli. How are you?
Doing okay today. Thanks for having a minute to chat. So as you know, we did the HQS inspection in the unit the other day. I'm really excited to get the client ready to move in and start the rent checks.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, the unit looks great. We had a lot fewer issues than we often find with units, so that was really, really fantastic. It was actually just one sort of picky thing on the HQS inspection form that we saw.
Okay. Yeah, I will do a lot of the work myself, and I really try to stay on top of it. So what did you see?
Yeah, for sure. And that absolutely shows. There was one of the windows in the unit had a bit of a crack in it, and that's actually something that's on the HQS list that we look for. So that would be the only thing that would have to be cleaned up before we can start paying rent on the unit for the client.
Okay. And which window was it? Because they cost different. Some of them are harder to replace, and some of them aren't. So
For sure. It was the top pane of the bathroom window.
Okay. Yeah. And there was a crack in it? Are you sure?
Yeah.
I wonder if it was just something.
We can definitely send over the photos from the inspection and let just point out where that one thing was so that you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. Photos would be good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I can get.
Yeah, because I was just in there and.
Yeah, for sure. If you have a chance to check out the photos, take a look at it. Does that sound like something that you would be willing to replace so we can get the client moved in?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want it to take too long. This is, I haven't worked with you guys before, and so some of this is new. But I just want to make sure we can get in there and get it taken care of really quickly, so we can, move things along and make sure everything's happening on time and there isn't like a big delay or anything on payments.
Absolutely, and that sounds fantastic. If you wanted to sort of, if you're interested in making the repair super quickly, so we can expedite getting the client moved in and getting you the rent checks, we're completely on board for that. I know that the client is really excited to get moved in as well.
Great. Yeah. So did you already send it to me? Have you already sent that to me? If you could send those over, that'd be great.
Actually, I will just attach those photos to an email and send.
Okay.
Come through.
Yeah, great. Okay, I'll refresh a couple times until I get it, and then I'll get right on it. Thanks for letting me know and getting that over to me quickly.
All right. Good job, guys. Excellent work.
Guys, I'm having too much fun with this.
So did, I don't want to ask how realistic that role play was. We'll just leave it at that. But so how did people think that that went? And is there anything that you would have done differently? Anything you thought went well, particularly any admirable skills presented?
There was no blame on what happened. It was just, this is the facts. If you want to see it, I have it available to you. Can we move forward?
Right. Yeah. Anyone else?
I mean, I think she did a good job because when it comes to the repair stuff, you don't want to give too much advice, like suggesting places to get it fixed or handymans and stuff in case things go wrong. So I think by her just letting her know, hey, this is something that needs to be taken care of so we can move forward, kind of keeps it, you know, even playing field where the landlord is like, well, you told me to do this, and then now, you know, I have this issue or wasn't done up to city code or whatnot. So I think just like you said, stating what you've learned in your training as far as the AHQS training, because you don't necessarily go by city code for everything. It's just like, hey, these are the issues. This is what I need to pass in order for us to move forward, and then just kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. I think also pointing out that, you know, to find a new tenant, if they didn't want to make this repair at this point, would take them even longer than probably making the repair. If it seems like she's really concerned about timing and how long it's going to take to make the repair.
Yeah, I thought the sort of less is more approach, but just making sure that like, let me get you whatever you need very quickly, but not over offering, like Jeremiah was saying, not over offering to like fix it, like to get too involved. Just to be like, here's the thing, super simple. I will send you whatever you need to make you feel like that's true. And I will
there was a list in my scenario. There was a list of cosmetic issues with the apartment that was pretty long. That indicated to me it wasn't super well maintained. But also I would tell the client about that, and Lily seemed pretty defensive about her maintenance of the unit. So I didn't want to push on any of those. That's my thought process. Cool.
Some things are passable with comments. So like small holes, scratches, cosmetic stuff. So it's just, like you said, explaining that to the tenant. And if everybody's okay with it and it's not a habitable or hazardous situation, then you definitely don't have to fill the unit. You just, on your HQS form, you make note of it and say, hey, it was a large scratch on the floor in the kitchen, but it's not a hazardous scratch or anything. You just move forward. So it doesn't slow down the process.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So moving on to the second scenario. So, okay. So in this role play, it's going to be Jeremiah who is going to be playing the case manager, and I'm going to be playing the landlord. Again, this is another situation where the case manager, the landlord is sort of already interested in renting to the client. You're just at lease signing and trying to figure out, discussing some extra lease terms that the landlord has sort of slipped in there. All right.
Hello, how you doing? So I know we're here now, we move forward, we're past everything and we're about to sign a lease, but I noticed that you wanted to add an addendum on some house rules. So I just kind of want to get a little bit more information on that if possible.
Yeah, so I talked to my lawyer about the situation I had. You know, like I'm really interested in running to your client and everything, but I've been a landlord in the past where I've accepted some, had some tenants from programs, and there was this one situation where this tenant was just had these super loud parties every weekend. And I can't have another loud tenant. So I decided that the best way to do that is to just say, you can't have guests. Like, you can go to other people's houses to have parties, but, they just can't have guests. And so, I hope that's okay, but that's pretty important to me.
Gotcha. So I understand. As a suggestion, because I don't think legally we can tell people they can't have guests, because this is not a program, so to say, that, sometimes we deal with SROs or, units where people are in shared living situations and you have these sort of house rules. Maybe we can take a different approach and so that everybody feels comfortable. Maybe we can do maybe a shorter lease term, since we haven't signed anything yet, just to kind of see how things go. Because she does want to have family over at times. She's a very hardworking single mom. She has a small child that she can't really afford childcare right now, but she's trying to get on her feet. So sometimes her sister spends the night. So, but we'll make her aware of, how many calendar days in a year someone can actually stay with you before they gain tenancy rights. I mean, that's one thing about our organization, is that we try to make sure that both sides really understand this legal binding document that we're signing. So I don't know if having a shorter lease term would work out, because she will need that extra support, can kind of help out with you feeling more comfortable about her having guests. My job is to highlight within the lease, the noise ordinance that you have, your quiet hours, nobody being too loud after 10, also making sure that she understands that she's responsible for her guests, and all her guests should be at her unit if she's having folks over for, Sunday dinner or whatnot. So I don't know if that sounds more appealing. I mean, we've, in the past, my company has also had folks do month-to-month situations. I just want to save you the headache or the time, or as far as, you not getting what you need, and also it going any beyond like legal stuff like that. It all costs money. We don't want you to spend more money. You've done such a wonderful job on the place, and you already spent money that way. So we try to avoid any legal confrontations or anything. So we can set a shorter term if that works for you. I don't know.
Yeah, I like that. It's sort of like a wait and see type situation. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense, because if it's her sister's coming over, and it sounds like she's not gonna cause a lot of problems, and so you're gonna talk to your client about like what it says in the lease and make sure they understand they can't.
So yeah, so what we'll do is the day we sign, if you want to be present, because I kind of like to do it that way where everybody's in the same room, so there's no miscommunication that someone didn't understand what was there, and we can go through the lease. I know it's kind of lengthy, but we can highlight the main points that you want to get across, and also to make sure that she understands as well. Most important is always the rent is due on the first, how many guests can be over, the quiet hours, if she has a parking space, no leaving trash out in different places. The main things that probably would be a really concern for you and also her neighbors, because she won't be the only person living here. She has to think about them as well. So we will definitely go over it and highlight those areas so that everybody feels comfortable and there's no miscommunication moving forward. I mean, she has me as a case manager. She has a housing specialist. If there are any issues, you can feel free to reach out to us, because this is a collaborative effort that we want to help you and be support to you as a landlord, and then we want to support our client be successful, because she's working very hard to try and be self-sufficient.
And she sure is lucky to have you as her case manager. Thanks a lot for the information. I appreciate that. Yeah, let's go ahead and sign that lease. Let's do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. All right. Well, I couldn't argue. I mean, there was nothing left for me to say, basically, after that. Does anyone else have thoughts or comments or? Anything on that?
I loved the let me help you not do illegal stuff approach. You know, just like really dialing it back on like what the program can do and like how you're there to help. I thought.
Yeah, and I think it was really good how you kind of made it so that you didn't do this explicitly, but you made it seem like my concern was really just kind of unfounded. You know, like you went into her backstory and you explained like, this is who she is. These are the kinds, these are the guests who she's going to have. And you made it really clear that you're going to be there to help educate her about what the lease says. And also, yeah, you did a very good job, I think, in pointing out, you weren't like, wow, that's a crazy lease term, you can't do that. But it was, it was like, yeah, you know, we can't really have a situation where there are like legal problems. So I thought that was a good way to handle that.
I mean, in my time, what I found that landlords really want to avoid is evictions or having to pay a lawyer or anything. So I think making them feel comfortable up front, and instead of just telling somebody no, have a solution and an answer to why you're saying you can't do it instead of just saying no. And we've done things again where if that doesn't work out, we'll try it as a trial period, you know, do a shorter lease term. So then that way the client has the opportunity to get their deposit back, move to another place, we can relocate them. And it's not a messy situation versus you locking them in for a year. And then now we have to get somebody to say or agree to break that lease, where it's like, well, hey, you've been here for 6 months, not really working out. You move out in time, you get your deposit back.
Right. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts or reflections on that? Yeah, so I think that's those were the role plays that we had for you all today, and we are available if you have any questions for us. You can email us at sanmateo@homebaseccc.org at any time about anything that came up in the training you have questions about. We'll be sending out the slides. And we also just wanted to remind you that we have our next training on Wednesday, October 7th. From 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we're going to be talking about just continuing to build sort of the trusting and more longer term landlord engagement techniques and relationships, you know, as you progress in your relationships with the landlords.
And I want to make sure we let you all know that, as always, we will be sending out the post-survey feedback form. So we really, really appreciate when you all take some time to fill those out. We can't sort of stare you down as you leave the training room anymore, but it really, really does help us when you take the time and we email those out to fill them out, because we take your feedback and we do actually do our best to implement whatever we can. So we appreciate that.
And thanks again to Jeremiah and Myrna and Morgan for participating in our role plays. We really appreciate.
And Rosa.
Yeah, and Rosa, sorry. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.